Hello, everyone. Thank you for arriving. We're going to be starting very soon the webinar about startup ecosystem development best practices. In the meantime, feel free to share with us in the chat your name, your location, uh, what are you working on. You're connected to startup ecosystem development. So we'll allow 2 minutes before we're starting, and feel free to share what you're up to in the chat. I'll do the same. Thank you. Yes, sir. Good. So I think we can get going with the quick share screen with you. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, anything you want to ask, feel free to do it either in the chat or let me see that I have chat on here. Okay. So you can do it either in the chat or preferably, I would probably see it better if it's on the QA panel. So you have a QA option to ask questions. For us, it's good. If you ask questions, it's even better. Much more interesting to figure out what is exactly on your mind. And so that's good. And yeah, I see that we have a few people from all over the world. We have Alistair from Johannesburg. That's good. Hi, Alistair. Great ecosystem, by the way. A guy from Calgary, one of the top ecosystems in Canada. So that's pretty cool. And then some from Slovenia. Slovenia used to be a very good startup ecosystem for blockchain, a little bit decreased recently, so it would be interesting to see how it pushes further. And yeah, keep on introducing yourself in the chat because one of the things that we want to do is for you to also connect with each other. So feel free. Yeah, basically today we're going to talk a little bit about startup ecosystem development. And my name is Eli David Rokah. This is my email. If you have any questions, eli@startuplink.com. The agenda for today is the introduction of StartupBlink, a little bit about our recent publications and upcoming publications. We'll then going to speak a little bit about the economic importance of startup ecosystem, and then move to the main part, which is guidelines on how to build a startup ecosystem of a good level. That should be fun to. And again, chat or QA. QA, I'm getting a notification. Once I finish every slide, I'll try every 1 or 2 slides to check. A little bit about StartupLink. StartupLink is a global startup map and research center. We work together with more than 100 governments, corporations, and also multilateral agencies like the UN and the World Bank and so on to research ecosystems, to develop them, and figure out what's going on in the world of innovation. It's always interesting. The data that we have and our algorithms are covering more than 200,000 startups. We researched the startup ecosystems of 120 countries, 1,300 cities. And very soon, we're also starting to research and rank 350 corporates around the world. That's fun. We like checking what's going on in the world and telling everyone who is winning and who is losing. Part of our hobbies. We're hobbies, but that's good. And yeah, basically, in terms of startup ecosystem development, we're supporting the growth of more than 100 governments that are operating in that. And what they do is they're mapping their ecosystem, analyzing, promoting their ecosystem, activating their ecosystem. We'll talk about why are all those things really important today, because unfortunately, a lot of our governments are not doing almost nothing in terms of startup ecosystem development. And it's really a pity because this is the biggest engine growth of our economy. So I'll just give you a recommendation that basically, if your startup, your government is doing good work, do know that you're in a very good location because most of them don't necessarily care. So that's just for that. Now, let me quickly, okay. So let me quickly tell you a little bit about the Global Startup Ecosystem Index. This is an index that ranks all the countries, all the cities. It's a free report available for everyone. It's report.startupblink.com. Well, if you're an entrepreneur, we'll speak about why is this so important, let's say, to pay attention to which ecosystems are the best. A little bit about our most recent reports. They're all available at startupblink.com/report, again, for free. We have the artificial intelligence reports, the best cities and countries for artificial intelligence. Or if you're building a startup that has to do with artificial intelligence, try to check where should you build it. The same report we have for food tech. So feel free to check it out. And the upcoming report is going to be launched on the 2nd of April. We're going to launch it on the 1st. Okay, we're going to think it's a joke. So on the 2nd of April, we're going to launch the Corporate Startup Activity Index, ranking more than 350 corporates. Corporates are very important to startup ecosystem development. And I have to tell you that recently, a lot of the corporates have shut down their program. So hopefully this thing would allow them to at least celebrate a little bit their achievement. So their CEO keep on budgeting them. And the startup ecosystem needs a lot of actors, including governments, including corporates. All of them support the main actor. There is only one main actor, which is the startup entrepreneur. So that's the idea. And good. So a little bit of why ecosystems matter for entrepreneurs. So whoever is building a startup in the audience should pay very, very close attention to which ecosystems are the best and which ones are underperforming, and make sure that they are trying to be in a place that is actually winning. And the reason is as follows. Both the unicorns of the world, 90% of them, and many of the successful self-funded startups are in winner cities. They are in cities that are winning. Now, those cities don't have a higher level of intelligence than the other cities. What happens is that you build your startup, if you're in the right place, there is a flywheel process that allows for much better chances of success if, let's say, you're in San Francisco or New York, than if you are in a capital city in, let's say, I don't know, Central Eastern Europe, and even Western Europe. Because simply there are opportunities there that are happening that are not happening in other places. The fun thing is, or the sad thing, is that you would never notice because those opportunities are random. You basically meet people that would push your startup to the next level. You meet the person that's connected with your client or your investor, so on. So if you are stuck in a small village, you would never feel the pain of not receiving those random gifts. But receiving those random gifts is incredibly important. Naval Ravikant, which is someone that I have great admiration for, says there are three big decisions. What are you working on? Who are you working with? Basically your co-founders and so on. And where are you building? And the where are you building is something that a lot of us are not paying enough attention to. It's simply going to give you magical opportunities that would not exist in others. That's why it's so critical. And of course, those places have much higher concentration and quality of investors, of clients that are used to work with startups, of co-founders, team members, suppliers. You would have more knowledge and events there. You would be able to connect better. And also, the emotional level is that those places are supporting entrepreneurs. If you build a startup in a small village, in a family environment, everyone's going to tell you get a job. If you do it in a place like San Francisco, New York, or London, people are going to get you. That's very, very important because entrepreneurship is extremely difficult. So there are many, many reasons of why specifically 90% of the unicorns of the world are located in just a few cities when there are 10,000 cities globally. So that's always been interesting to check. So basically, have a look on why do ecosystem ranking. So the reason why ranking an ecosystem matters is that startups, investors, corporates use them to make decisions. So again, if you're a startup founder and you have to make a decision about where should you build your startup, you basically have to use all those sources. They also help the ecosystem developers to track their progress and to build a strategy. And of course, it also gives marketing tools to promote your startup, which is critical because startup ecosystems that nobody knows that are good, that are great, are not great because it's simply just like a company that has no marketing and nobody knows about. So it can be great, but the idea is that if the government has not spent effort in pushing this forward, then it's a little bit problematic. And it also changes the narrative about the ecosystem and the local economy. Generally, the reason why startup ecosystems are so important, because a lot of governments and other elements are looking at them as sort of like fluffy items. It's nice to have entrepreneurs and so on. It's not nice. It's critical. It is an economic engine. It's the economic engine of your country. And if your country is not doing well in terms of startups, the future prospect of your economy is not necessarily good because startups are becoming more and more important. Have a look at the most valuable companies in the world. 50 years ago, they would be all oil companies. Now they're tech companies. Everything is going. So whoever stays out of the game is risking the future of their economy. It's not a nice to have feature, much more than that. So startup economies, generally good startup economies, are creating high quality jobs, resulting in happier people and also in much more taxes because a lot of the taxation is going on the job. Exit, a lot of taxes as well. For example, Israel, there was a Wiz exit to Google just a few days ago in 32 billion. Imagine the amount of taxes that the country receives out of those exits. And they're immense. They change the trajectory and the deficit of the country. If done correctly, if we don't look at startups as a nice to have fluffy item, but as an economic engine, it can transform the economy of the country. They attract investors and foreign entrepreneurs, critical, because attracting foreign entrepreneurs and investors is a keystone of economics. They prevent brain drain. Brain drain is the biggest tragedy in terms of startup ecosystems and in terms of economy. Countries and cities, their top resource is the people that they have. So if those people are leaving, and I've seen quite a few countries where people are actually leaving relatively early, then of course those countries are not going to progress. So that's the idea. And all countries are fighting for talent. The story of countries working together, ecosystem cooperating, and so on, it's not necessarily correct. It's mainly a zero-sum game where everyone is fighting for the talent that can only choose one city and for the investors that can only choose startups in a specific location. Building a good startup ecosystem also creates resilience to shock. So, for example, if you have a war or if you have a pandemic and so on, the location that has a good startup ecosystem will be affected much less than a location that is counting on tourism. That's one thing. And also becoming a startup ecosystem, a strong startup powerhouse, improves your strategic and geopolitical situation. And in today's world, it's critical. You've seen that the world is becoming more and more fragmented. The countries that have a champion, let's say, for example, the Netherlands with ASML, Taiwan with TSMC, Israel with what's going on there, are becoming more powerful and are building more strength. That if they would have a weak startup ecosystem, probably now no one would care about them in a way. So that's kind of like a way to improve your geopolitical situation by creating those winners. That's something that has to be taken into. Now, a little bit about the research and what we found out. And again, the beauty is that we're very, very soon launching the 2025 index. We're going to be launched, if I'm not mistaken, 20th of May. So the results are going to be updated. There's going to be a few changes. But generally, if you want to know what's going on currently in the world, the United States, by far, per capita, the best country in the world for startups. You can see here in the total score that we're talking about a very, very big difference from everyone else, 4 times more. We have a clear winner in the startup game. They were the ones that started the earlier, and they're also the global economy, the engine of the global economy. They're benefiting massively from the fact that the vast majority of the application you have in your iPhone are made in the USA. United Kingdom is doing generally good, second place. You can see Israel and Canada also doing very well. Singapore keeps on increasing in the ranking, so that's kind of like the dark horse that keeps on advancing quietly, but systematically. That's something that I really enjoy about Singapore, and I recently read a book from by Lee Kuan Yew, the mythological leader of Singapore, how they are not making mistakes, just building gradually, get to the top. A beautiful example of economic development. Over there, you can see also Sweden, Germany, France, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. So that's a little bit about that. You would see that in the top 10 in terms of output, by the way, there is all the methodology of those rankings are in a few pages of the free report that we told you about. So if someone wants to really dig in, feel free. It's a fascinating world and a fascinating way to measure the output of those ecosystems. You can see here that in terms of countries, Latin America and Africa are still not represented in the top 10, but they're heavily represented in the top 1,130 countries and the 1,300 cities. And the beauty is, by the way, in terms of startup ecosystem, that there isn't necessarily an advantage to size, which means that small countries, if they play their cards correctly, you have quite a few countries here with less than 10 million people. Israel, Singapore, Switzerland. So basically, there are some advantages to actually being small. There are some advantages to being big as well. So Carlos is asking about India. India is ranked number 22 in the world per population number. Again, it's adjusted to the population, but let me click on the cities inside. And over here, you will see that Bangalore, when not adjusted for population, only looking at the city, is number 8 in the world. Bangalore is a great ecosystem. There's also Delhi and Mumbai that very well. Once again, when you don't adjust for population and looking at the actual success of a specific city, you can also see 2 Chinese ecosystems connected to what you talked about, Carlos. In the top 10, both Beijing and Shanghai are doing extremely well. So if we talk a little bit about the cities and we analyze the situation there, then basically what we have here is a clear winner, and the clear winner is, of course, San Francisco Bay. We're talking about almost 3 times better than anything else. Anything else in New York. You also see that there is a massive, massive gap in the total score between New York and anyone else. So basically, you have San Francisco League of its own, New York League of its own. Then you have a combination of a few ecosystems. In this case, it's going to be London, Los Angeles, and Boston, all of them around the same number, and I'm sorry, in Beijing as well. So those are the winners, and then you have Shanghai, Bangalore, Tel Aviv, and Paris that are closing the list. In terms of location, we see that we have two ecosystems from Europe, and four cities from North America, and Asia has also four cities. So that's kind of the distribution. And I do want to say that the top five ecosystems are truly global in nature. What do I mean by global in nature? I mean that they develop for the world, and most of their entrepreneurs are also not necessarily born in the city or the country. Many of some top startups are started by foreigners. The bottom five are a little bit different. So Beijing and Shanghai, for example, are amazing ecosystems, but they're focusing on China only. Bangalore is the same, focusing on India only. Tel Aviv and Paris are actually global in nature, but most of their entrepreneurs are local. So it goes into very interesting levels of, and you can see actually that the ones that are targeting global audience, all the top five, and are also very much open to attracting entrepreneurs from the outside, are in the top five, compared to two ecosystems that are going global, Tel Aviv and Paris, but are actually very much focused on local entrepreneurs, that they can't really advance to the top tier. So that's pretty interesting. Again, if there are questions, feel free either in the chat or the QA. I'm gonna have a look from time to time. So the challenges, a little bit about startup ecosystem challenges, and I want to start with one of the most important challenges, which is the mindset of our entrepreneurs. So basically, it's very clear that the most important asset an ecosystem has is our entrepreneurs. Okay? That's the most precious resource. Their quality is not dictated necessarily by their education, by their status, by their intelligence, because intelligence is very well divided almost similarly. Their quality is mostly dictated by their mindset. Now, if you have entrepreneurs that are go-getters and are just getting the job done, going global, not thinking about risks and so on, you're going to win. And there are a few countries in the world that have them. The USA has them, Sweden has them, Israel has them, and also the Netherlands, for example. We're going to give you a few examples of very go-getter people, and then there are a few of them that are actually bound by mindset that is actually not allowing us to build an ecosystem. This mindset usually has to do with risk aversion, mainly due to social pressure. So the idea over here is that if you compare places like Asia and Israel, if you don't open a startup, if you don't start a startup, people will mock. They'll tell you, oh, you're working for Google, you're a startup. Why are you working for Google? Here's your startup. In a place like Asia, or in some cases in Europe, in some societies, people actually pressure you not to open a startup and to get a job. This thing is very, very important. What the society thinks about you and how risk averse you are. There are some places with negative image of successful entrepreneurs, call it the hero of business. So let's say in former communist countries, if you're an entrepreneur, I notice whenever I go there that I'm talking about someone that built a unicorn or is the most successful startup in the ecosystem, and people would say, yeah, but his parents helped him and he was born rich and whatever, and they would always find way of showing why is someone successful and tricking the system. And in successful ecosystem, the initial approach would be if someone is winning to cheer for this person, not to find reasons why they trick the system, but actually to say, here is a cultural hero. The reason why it's so important is that if you're an entrepreneur, everyone wants to be a hero. Nobody wants to be a villain. So the idea is that if your society is celebrating you as a hero, you would stay, and as a success story, you will also fund the next startup in a way. If you're considered a villain and manipulator, the minute you acquire your exit, you will take off and go to the US to live a comfortable life. So that's actually very important also on the mindset. The other thing is some ecosystems have structural lack of trust. Or basically, you can't trust your co-founders because they're probably going to cheat you. You know, you can't trust your investors because they just want part of your company and probably want to give you a very low valuation. You don't trust people to even speak about your project, and you always want the NDA because someone's going to see it. So those ecosystems, and I've seen a lot of them, are not making it. Because basically, people are always holding themselves from sharing, from celebrating, from connecting. And some of the ecosystems that get it, for example, the USA ecosystem, the Israeli ecosystem, the UK ecosystem, over there, everything is an open book. Everyone is helping each other. This is important. And you want to be in an environment like that. And the last point connected a little bit to the hero or villain is the insufficient celebration of success. In ecosystems that are successful, the entrepreneurs that are making it big are celebrated. For example, in Israel, the exit of Wheat a few days ago, the guy, basically the co-founders are all over the magazines as hero. In ecosystems that are not successful, those people are not, nobody's going to speak about them. Everyone's going to be sort of like grudgy or not so happy about them, and no one's going to celebrate. And it's important to celebrate those people because they are the ones that are building the economic future of the country. That's a little bit about specifically about important. Let's talk a little bit about the business environment. I honestly think that if governments need to do only one thing, is to deal with the business environment. That's the biggest win. And the key is basically to make entrepreneurs' life easy and just let them do their thing because it's their thing, not our thing as a government. Their So what you want to create is basically an environment where it's easy to navigate registration. You want to register a company, incorporate company, super easy. Easy to report your annual report. No one's going to ring you and start threatening you with tax stuff and stuff like that. It's basically an environment that works for you as an entrepreneur. A favorable tax system is important. Entrepreneurs today, in this age, in the digital age, can pick every location that they want. That's why locations like Singapore, the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, Cyprus, for example, in Europe, are growing. They simply are making life easier and more profitable for their entrepreneurs. Sophisticated banking systems are also very, very important. You can be in a location that has good business environment, but if you go to a bank and the bank stops you from receiving money, sending money, and so on, your life is a nightmare. You can't stay in it. So it's also very, very important. So the idea is that governments, if they focus on the business environment, are getting the biggest wins there are. And the beauty is that those wins are usually very low cost. Instead of giving grants and billions of dollars to the startup, if you focus on actually making life easier for everyone, your economy is growing and you don't have to give money to people. Pretty cool. So that's a side note. Conclusion, if a government can only do one activity to support its local ecosystem, it should be just to make sure you remove the roadblocks for entrepreneurs. That's basically our opinion, and that's what we've seen in reality. This is the biggest thing. Now, governments should also focus on the macro and not on the micro of their startup ecosystem. So instead of being micromanagers, they should be macro managers. First of all, what is a micromanager? Micromanager is saying, you're a good startup. I'm going to give you a grant. You're not a good startup. I'm not going to give you a grant. You're an interesting program. I'm going to fund you. Lots of politics, lots of spending, very few results, usually more damage than good. So the government should focus on business environment, on the macro, promoting your ecosystem. The government is basically the marketing branch of a city and a country. It has to be obsessed about promotion. The support and activation of private ecosystem developers. We much rather to have those organizations on the private level that would run things and would do the activities and so on than the government. They're well suited to it. They can run faster as well. Governments always have to make sure that they're not making a mistake. So by outsourcing some of your ecosystem to the private sector ecosystem developers is a great move. And sometimes your ecosystem is very much stuck. Only on those cases we can consider jump-starting the ecosystems with incentives and grants, but usually you want to avoid it. And of course, one of the things that the government needs to do is also build a coherent strategy in terms of what do you want to happen in the future, focusing on the things that work, especially the verticals, the industries that are successful, and, and working on fixing those anomalies that are stopping the ecosystem from growing. One of the things that I'm seeing recently is that everyone wants to do, all the governments are saying, we want to become an AI and deep tech. You can only do that if you have massive amount of funding. But those governments are basically neglecting those industries that they do really well. Like, for example, we rank very high in agtech or in fintech or in blockchain. They would focus only on deep tech and AI, although they don't have the resources just because those are fun buzzwords. That's kind of like a little bit of a thing that we want to avoid, and to make sure that we have a clear strategy that is not a copy paste from the strategy of another government that has totally different conditions than you. And this is something that we're also working on with our clients and partners to actually build the strategy, promote the ecosystem, to attract people from the outside, and also to prove to our own entrepreneurs that it's worthwhile to stay. That's so important. Instead of just giving grants or so on. Yeah, that's not a good way to go. So a little bit about the concept of success. Nothing beats it. An ecosystem evolves to a brand and builds a flywheel, each success story at a time. So we go one by one. And we have the startup that raised the $1 million. We will celebrate that. And we will then have the startup that raised $10 million. And we will celebrate them as well. We will have the startup that exited $20 million, and you will celebrate it. You will have a startup that hired 20 people from their local community, and you will celebrate them as well. And after a lot of years, because nothing is quick, you're going to have a startup that sells for $32 billion and change your debt. But you can't get there immediately. You have to wait, to be patient, and you have to build, and you have to celebrate each milestone at a time. There is no real way to jump from zero to hero. Okay? So other than that, government should basically share and celebrate success stories. Again, the problem is that if success story happened and nobody knows about it, it didn't really happen. So that's really, really important in those things. Other examples of support. Governments can do active investments in startups, but this is tricky. You have to be very, very careful. Only if your ecosystem is totally stuck, you can start doing that, but be aware of the risks. The risk here is that if you start investing in startups, you're starting to be a competitor, actually, of the private sector. So you're basically competing with private investors, you're pushing them out. You have to be very, very careful here, working together with private sector entrepreneurs. In later stages, if you have a developed ecosystem, it might make sense to give investment to startups, but only matching investment from the private sector or for specific R&D strategic verticals. And some of the things that some governments are doing is investing more in cities left behind after a hub is established. So basically, the idea is that when you have a very strong city, and that's important, we always need a winner. Again, remember, let's celebrate our winner. And in order to build a tower, we can't, let's say, share the success between all the cities and villages of our country. We need one that is a clear winner that can represent us on a global level, maybe even two or three if you're the United States or India. But the idea is to, once you have those winners established, then you can help the others grow as well. And you want a variety of ecosystems. So it's clear that people are going to go to the winner at some point, but they don't have to go there immediately when they start the company. They can go there 1 year after, for example. And that's what we're always telling our clients. Basically, yes, in many cases, it's unavoidable that your top startups are going to go to London or San Francisco, but let's delay it by giving them the condition to stay as much as possible. And the beauty is that when they stay, when they do go to San Francisco, they will keep a lot of their operations in your city because your city is probably much cheaper. So, but if they go on day one, when they're just starting, it's over. There is no more connection. So that's important. Other things that you can think about is making visa rule easier for foreign entrepreneurs, really focusing on English in terms of education, encouraging international corporations to build local R&D centers. This is something that Israel, for example, has done heavily 30 or 40 years ago. And bringing all those companies like Intel and Google and so on to your ecosystem helps a lot. And incorporation, fast incorporation, even in one day. Singapore, you can incorporate in 1 hour. Okay, so like very good place. For example, another great ecosystem like Cyprus that has very good tax incentives and so on, but incorporation would take you a few months. So the idea is again, let's make life as easy as possible. I do want to say that about English. English is very, very important. And native speakers of English have an unfair advantage in terms of startup ecosystem development, and there is a very good correlation between the success of a city and country in terms of its startup to the level of English that is average in the population. So unfortunately, the Americans and people from the UK and Australia have a little bit of an unfair advantage. They can go global from day one. Whatever they build for their local market is also relevant because of the shared language to globally, to the other big markets. That means that if you're in a smaller country, let's say like Estonia or Finland or Switzerland, you want to go global from day one. Of course, knowing English is so important. One of the reasons why the Japanese ecosystem, for example, is not advancing as fast as it should, considering its potential, is the relatively low level of English. One of the things that we're always saying to the government, invest in English. It's going to take 20 years to see the difference, but it's going to be a very important difference. So that's kind of the idea over here. I think that there are a few other elements that we want to speak about before that. In terms of the challenges as well, we mentioned the lack of business-friendly environment. We also mentioned the problematic mindset. There is a lot of problems also with lack of capital. Everyone will tell you, my biggest problem is that I don't have investors in my ecosystem. There is no good way to solve this other than achieving success stories. It will be the egg and the chicken. Get the $1 million exit, get the $5 million exit, and the $10 million exit. The beauty about investors is that they're going to rise, but it's not enough for them to have excellent business conditions. They need to see also that a city or a country are constantly generating return. So they have the FOMO of not building a branch in the country and starting to invest. So now investors are very much keen toward London, Tel Aviv, and so on, because those places are starting to generate exits that regardless of the geopolitical situation of the country, they're still going to pour their money there because in the end of the day, they care about return. And there are some places that have oversized return. That's the kind of here in a way. Of course, we have some systems that have lack of resources in terms of infrastructure in Africa and so on. Some of the areas that we work with, internet is almost unavailable. Like electricity always keeps on shutting down, and you don't have co-working spaces. So governments have to focus also on solving those challenges if they have infrastructure challenges. Now, a little bit about low cost of living and high cost of living. A place with low cost of living is great because if you build a startup, of course, your money can go very long way. The problem is that when you have a low cost of living, for me as a startup founder, let's say, it's much more attractive to work as a developer for a foreign company than to start a startup. So there is a thing here that actually low cost of living can create a situation that people don't want to build a startup because it's so lucrative to get a job for a foreign company. And also the problem with low cost of living is that a lot of people are a little bit sneaky. One of the things I remember from trip in Germany is that I asked the VC why does it seem that the entrepreneurs of Munich are more successful than the ones in Berlin? They told me, yeah, the Berlin ones can party because Berlin wasn't that expensive at the time, 10 years ago. Now it's much more expensive. Munich you can't survive without being successful. So the idea is that you can't tell lies to yourself. A place with very high cost of living would also push you very fast towards success. That's something that is a little bit fascinating. Guy is asking about the importance of keeping and nurturing intellectual property assets in the ecosystem. The important thing for me, other than the assets or the IP, is where the entrepreneurs are. Because if the entrepreneurs are in a place that the startup is making an exit, then you're going to receive the government is going to receive the exit tax from the capital gain. So for me, it's all about actually not the assets and not the IP. It's all about the brain drain or brain gain. Do you lose people or do you gain people? So that's kind of like the idea over here of what we like to focus on. The biggest resource is not a patent, people, the entrepreneurs. And your biggest struggle is convincing them that they should stay and convincing the outsiders that they should arrive. That's what you should be obsessed about. And that's the idea. And I do want to say a caveat for government support. Too much government support in micro of basically, oh, you're a great startup, let me give you 50,000 euros and so on. It's sometimes much more damaging, not only the cost that it costs, but it creates a situation that now you're competing with the private sector investors, you're cannibalizing them, and you're distorting the incentives of entrepreneurs, which is the most foolish thing. Because entrepreneurs and good entrepreneurs will only focus on one thing, product and selling. Sales, product. The minute you confuse them with a grant or with support or give them 500,000 or 100,000, you're now turning them into bureaucrats because they're very good in identifying where is the easy money. And the easy money usually in a perfect place is by building a great product, selling it. And if you're now putting a grant, I've seen ecosystems where the entrepreneurs are basically bureaucrats filling forms to achieve the next round. Seeing this breaks my mind. Basically, coming from good intentions, but creating so much damages, we have to be extremely careful when we're doing things like that. So that's kind of the uh, over here. And yeah, I think that generally, let's maybe conclude. Feel free to ask questions, and maybe let's conclude with a few with two case studies. One is the Estonia. So Estonia is a very interesting place because it's a small country, less than 2 million people. They have managed to create a major success story. They have a few major success stories: Pipedrive, Bolt, Wise, Skype. Everything started from Skype. Skype is actually a Swedish company that basically developed their product in Estonia because it used to be much cheaper. Estonia is very, very, very good in marketing, extremely good in marketing. I truly admire their ability to promote an ecosystem. And, and basically, the idea is that they took the success of Skype and basically created a situation that Estonia is now known in the world, and they're fighting for foreign talent. They're doing whatever they can to bring foreign talent. Once again, great marketing. By the way, Skype is also a nice example because the Estonian co-founders, what they call in Estonia the Skype Mafia, stayed in Estonia. Again, remember how important it is to celebrate your heroes and make them feel like heroes and not villains. So those guys, when they make an exit, they didn't go to Sweden, they didn't go to the USA, they didn't go to Hawaii, they stayed in Estonia to basically invest in the next generation of startups. So basically, the Sky people basically invested, if I'm not mistaken, in Pipedrive, in Bolt, in Wise, and so on. That's what an ecosystem that celebrates entrepreneurs is creating. So that's something that Estonia managed to do against all odds. Again, less than 2 million people and such amazing results. A lot of it is coming from strategy and from policy. So that's a little bit the idea. A guy is asking about Canada. Many startups stay in our ecosystem, but many are funded by foreigners. Look, many startups in Canada are moving to the USA. One good example would be the founder of Snap, that is Canadian, that basically moved away. And the idea over here is that Canada, the problem, going on a tangent, is that Canada really has not created in the last few years very high quality startups. You can't even name a good startup, a really world-class startup, that maybe one or two, but not more. And I can't even think of one. The biggest problem with Canada is actually the USA. The USA is slow. You can go there relatively easily. This is an ecosystem that is definitely underperforming. Although I do have to say that the government of Canada are investing a lot in solving this issue. But basically, the idea is that you're actually losing the entrepreneurs, the founders of Slack and so on. It's much more interesting than the iPhone. If you manage to be in a situation, but Canada did do something amazing, by the way. The most important world quality, world-class startup in Canada is, of course, Shopify. Who is Shopify? A German co-founder. So over here, we're talking about a company worth, I don't know, $100 billion or something like that, that basically was created by one guy from Germany that arrived to Canada. Imagine if he would have stayed in Germany, be able to pull it off, who knows, another ecosystem. We talked about how important it is to choose the right one. Germany now would have its biggest startup, employing many, many thousands of people, bringing massive taxes to Germany. But this guy decided he's moving to Canada, and now Canada is reaping all the fruits from this. This is how important economically it is to even attract one guy or a girl that arrive and build a piece of a startup. That's kind of the idea. Another case study is Israel. So Israel is a good example of how do you make lemonade from lemon? Because a lot of countries are saying, yeah, but I can't win because of X, Y, Z. Israel now has a war with 7 different countries and entities. It has a super complicated environment, but it didn't go into victim mentality. Basically created a situation that its geopolitical situation created the biggest accelerator in the world, which is the army, and the most successful segment in cybersecurity. So the idea is that every country and city are facing with disadvantages and problems. The only question is, are you going to make lemonade out of lemon? Or are you going to say, because of the lemon, I can't be successful? That's a good one. Now, I do want to tell you, the economy of Israel has transformed because of startups. All the money, a lot of the money is arriving from startups. Again, we just 3 days ago sold by $32 billion. Imagine how much money, what's the impact of a debt in a way. And, and once again, going back to the point of small countries like Estonia, Israel, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and so on, not the Netherlands, but will be bigger, but Singapore, the beauty in small countries is that their entrepreneurs are thinking global from day one. They don't think about the local market. There is a thing that we call the middle country curse. Middle country curse is a country that has more than 20 million entrepreneurs, 20 million population. Now, what happens in those locations where you have 20 million, more than 20 million population is confusion because the entrepreneurs in places like that are not sure. Should I innovate for my country because the market is sort of big enough, or should I innovate globally? And I have to tell you, the value of startup ecosystems are entrepreneurs that are innovating for their country only if their local market is lower than 200 million people. And there are very, very few countries that are crossing this threshold. So we see a lot of locations in Asia and so on that people are saying, yeah, I'm going to start here, going to build my case studies here, and then I'm going to go global. Never. The right way to go is global from day one. The Israelis get here, they get that. The Estonians get that. Many other countries get it. The countries that don't get it are always. And so that's kind of like the idea about this case study. And that's basically, that's my email, eli@startuplink.com. So feel free. It's always fun to share a little bit of knowledge and to go into discussion. And if you have questions or you want to develop and build your startup ecosystem, we're at feedback@startuplink.com. So pretty good connecting with you. Thank you for arriving and see you very soon in the launch of our global report. It's May. So thanks again. Stay in touch. Bye.